What if everything you believe about space, carefully constructed lie? Have you ever asked yourself why NASA never releases real, complete, uncensored images of its most controversial missions? Why are so many documents related to UFOs and unidentified aerial phenomena appear with black stripes, as if there was something that the government and NASA itself did not want the public to know? In recent years, several Pentagon reports about UFOs have come to light. But, interestingly, the NASA remains completely silent about what it really knows. Is this a coincidence or strategy? Today, you will embark on a journey behind the scenes of the largest space agency in the world. Let's explore secret files, censored documents, mysterious images and reports from former employees who claim to have seen inexplicable and dangerously compromising things. We are talking about one of the greatest modern conspiracies where the truth may have been hidden for decades. Why has NASA, with billions in budget and cutting-edge technology, never presented concrete evidence about extraterrestrial life, even though military personnel and astronauts have reported contacts and sightings since the 1960s? What do they know about the UFOs, what we, the people, never had the right to discover, and more? Why do files classified as top secret remain inaccessible to the public, despite pressure from the scientific community and American citizens themselves? Are we on the verge of a bombshell revelation, or just scratching the surface of something much bigger? Before this video goes down, stay until the end. You will understand what NASA discovered and why the government does everything it can to keep this information away from you. Because what comes next could completely change the way you view space exploration and reality itself. What if all this is happening right before our eyes, but camouflaged under the cloak of science and space exploration? Now answer me honestly. Why does an agency like NASA, which claims to be committed to transparency and the pursuit of knowledge, still hides crucial information about phenomena that defy everything we know? Why do so many images from space missions mysteriously disappear or appear edited with pixelated or erased regions? What exactly is being covered up, and why? You need to understand. The more people who know the truth, the harder it will be for them to hide it. That's why your role here is much more important than just watching this video. By liking this content, by subscribing to the channel, you are helping to build a community that questions, investigates, and does not accept ready-made answers. What's more, by doing this, you prevent this video from being buried by the algorithm. The same algorithm that favors safe content and avoids what provokes, denounces and exposes secrets that may upset the powerful. You don't want this type of information to disappear from the internet. Then leave a like now. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because what we are going to reveal next may make you see NASA and the entire modern space project with different eyes. Let's show real facts. Documents that escape censorship, reports from those who were inside and saw what they shouldn't have seen. And the best part? You won't need to believe me. I will show you the evidence, but be careful. Every minute from now on will take you deeper into a web of secrets you may never have imagined existed. Get ready, because what's behind NASA's silence could be much bigger than just UFOs. And now, let's get to what the official reports don't tell you, but what leaks, testimonies, and secret documents are beginning to reveal now. Get ready to delve into the dark connections between NASA, UFOs, and behind the scenes of power. What comes next, could be the turning point in recent months. Something unprecedented began to happen behind the scenes of power. Public hearings in the United States placed the topic of UFOs, or as they prefer to call them now, UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, at the center of discussions. For the first time, representatives of American intelligence admitted before cameras and Congress that there are objects in the skies that defy all explanations known to current science. And more than that, they stated in all letters that there are records of impossible maneuvers, speeds that no human technology would be able to reach in appearances in national security zones without any trace of origin. These revelations, which for decades were treated as conspiracy theories, are now taking shape in official documents, military testimony, and technical analyses that make even skeptics uncomfortable. But amid all this movement, NASA remains silent, a silence that is uncomfortable, that screams more than any statement. Why doesn't a space agency with privileged access to deep space with satellites, telescopes and probes scattered everywhere, issue any strong notes about what is being revealed? Why don't you comment, analyze, or participate in the debates? The answer may lie precisely in what she fears to expose. While the United States openly admits that it is studying unexplained phenomena in the skies, NASA pretends that none of this affects it. And that's strange, to say the least. After all, we are talking about the agency responsible for monitoring space since the 1950s, the same one that leads missions to Mars, that photographs distant moons, that transmits solar activity in real time. How could this institution not have relevant data about the UFOs that are being discussed worldwide? Or better yet, does she have it, but doesn't want to share it? Many former NASA employees, retired military personnel, and intelligence analysts have publicly stated that some of the data captured by satellites and probes is classified as confidential and does not reach the public. This includes images that were edited before being published, audio recordings that were never released, and documents that mysteriously disappeared from digital archives. The pattern is always the same. When content gets too close to something that could shake the official narrative, it simply disappears. And don't think that we're talking about old files, dusty in the basement of some archive. We are talking about recent, contemporary evidence, much of it dating back to the last 10 years. Unidentified reports of objects appearing and disappearing in space near the International Space Station. Signals detected by interplanetary probes that have never been explained, and most alarming, the refusal to share this data with independent scientists. Meanwhile, Air Force pilots continue to report encounters with gravity-defying objects, which accelerate at instantaneous speeds, which disappear from radar as if they had never existed. And the most curious thing is that most of these sightings happen precisely in regions where NASA maintains bases, radars, and monitoring systems. Is it a coincidence or a cover-up? There are also reports from engineers who worked on secret missions and claim that NASA has specific protocols for dealing with anomalous events, and that these protocols include withholding information from the press and the general public. All of this leads us to an inevitable question. If there is an ongoing investigation in the United States into the presence of UFOs in airspace and even outside the atmosphere, why isn't NASA a protagonist in this process? Is the agency being told to keep quiet? Are there greater forces coordinating what can or cannot be revealed? Because, let's face it, an agency with the weight and technology of NASA would never be missed by phenomena of this magnitude. Worse still, when confronted, NASA tends to respond with vague, ready-made sentences, carefully worded so as not to compromise anyone. They say that there is no concrete evidence, or that no elements were found that confirm the non-human origin of the objects. But how can they say this if many of the videos released by the Pentagon show objects captured by highly precise sensors and radars with data that exceed current interpretation capabilities? Were they lying, or just hiding the most important part of the truth? Society deserves answers. After all, if there is something happening above our heads, whether in near space, in Earth orbit, or in even more distant regions, the public has the right to know, especially when that information can completely change the way we understand our own existence. The omission in this case is as serious as a lie, That's why videos like this are so important. Because while silence continues in the official corridors, here we say what cannot be said outside. We raise questions that many try to bury. And if you've come this far, it's because you feel like something is wrong. Because you, like many watching right now, feel like the pieces no longer fit together. That the truth is being shaped, manipulated, censored. Therefore, I want to know your opinion. Do you think NASA is withholding information about UFOs? Have you ever seen any of the videos released by the American government? What do you think is behind this silence from the space agency? Comment below using phrases like NASA is hiding something, or the government knows more than it reveals. I want to see how many people think like you. Your voice can be the spark that awakens other minds. But the most disturbing question arises precisely now. At the point where the available facts run out and the gaps begin, those strategic silences that perilously always appear when the conversation gets too close to uncomfortable truths. Why do certain records mysteriously disappear from NASA databases? Why do images captured by probes, telescopes, and satellites show abrupt cuts or visibly suspicious edits? And why, despite all the reports of unexplained sightings, is no solid official position taken by the most influential space agency on the planet? There are documents, images, and even video and audio recordings that were never released to the public, and this is not speculation. It is fact. Some of these files appear as classified or confidential in the internal records themselves. Others simply disappeared from online databases in updates that no one was able to explain. The pattern repeats itself over the years, with each new NASA mission that approaches something potentially revealing, such as the surface of the Moon, Mars, or regions of deep space. Files and images emerge that are then replaced by cleaner, more appropriate versions, always with some evasive technical explanation behind them. There are videos captured during missions in orbit that show unidentified objects crossing astronauts' field of vision. But when these excerpts reach the public, they are either cut or have reduced quality or are treated as visual artifacts. What is NASA trying to hide with this repetitive and evasive behavior? Why so much zeal in keeping certain information away from public knowledge? The truth is that this systematic omission points to something much deeper, something that goes beyond the barrier of chance or technical failure. And the mystery doesn't stop there. Reports from former employees, engineers, and outsourced technicians who served for NASA describe experiences that defy common sense. Some talk about censorship protocols where certain images could never be sent directly to public archives without going through strict screening. Others report the existence of specific rooms within the agency's facilities where unusual images were analyzed, always far from common supervision. These reports are recurrent, and even though they are often officially discredited, they continue to appear, coming from different sources and with increasingly consistent details. One of the most emblematic cases involves a NASA mission to the International Space Station, in which an object was seen approaching the station at high speed. The astronauts, in real time, commented on what happened, but minutes later, the transmission was cut and replaced by a fixed screen with a signal loss warning. This same recording, which was available on the agency's channel, disappeared days later. Coincidence, or a deliberate measure to hide what cannot be revealed? Another famous example is the images captured by the Hubble telescope and the Voyager probes. Several images at the time they were recorded showed geometric structures, moving lights and shapes that do not fit into any known natural pattern. However, these images were quickly replaced by other corrected versions, without any plausible scientific explanation for the changes. And once again, when questioned, NASA limited itself to saying that the initial images were defective. This type of behavior only reinforces a growing suspicion that NASA knows much more than he reveals. And the burning question is, why? What is behind this culture of silence? Could it be fear of collective panic, as many suggest? Or was it the desire to control information that could redefine the history of humanity if it were properly exposed? What if we are talking about a bigger agenda? Something coordinated not just by NASA, but by an alliance between governments, intelligence sectors, and large corporations. A global structure of secrecy and manipulation created to keep society ignorant, while the true secrets of the universe are explored behind closed doors. Because it's not just about extraterrestrial life. It's about technology, scientific advancement, power. Imagine the political and economic impact that a revelation of this magnitude would bring. The power structures we know today would be shaken. And perhaps, for this very reason, the truth is kept under lock and key. The most intriguing thing is that this hiding pattern does not only occur with images and videos. It extends to scientific experiments, measurement results, data collected on interplanetary missions. Many Mars exploration reports, for example, had sections deleted before reaching the public domain, and they weren't mistakes. These were intentional edits, justified by allegations of national security or the protection of strategic interests. But what interests would these be if we are talking about open science, knowledge for the common good? And even when there are leaks, when someone manages to expose a fraction of what is being hidden, the institutional response is always the same. Discredit the source, minimize the content, change the focus of the narrative. Have you noticed this? Whenever potentially compromising information appears, it is quickly labeled as fake news or placed in the same basket as absurd theories, even when there are official documents behind it. This is no coincidence. It's strategy, it's narrative. Control, NASA knows. And the proof of this is in the details that escape, in the mistakes that they can no longer avoid, in the documents that leak despite censorship. And that's why you're here. Because you feel like something is wrong. You see beyond what is shown, and you want to understand, want to be informed. You want to know how far this network of secrets goes. What's more, you want to have a voice. In this now, I want to know what you think. Comment below. Do you believe that NASA is hiding evidence of extraterrestrial life? That it manipulates images to prevent public access to real information? Right, NASA is hiding something. Or, I want the truth if you also feel that there is something much bigger behind all this. Let's make this comment appear in trends. Your engagement could be the beginning of a change. And as the fog of mystery slowly lifts, what begins to emerge is something even more disturbing than simple omissions. The truth begins to emerge in crooked and fragmented lines among muffled speeches, partially released documents, and files that narrowly escaped official censorship. What is at stake here goes beyond an institutional failure or a simple bureaucratic error. We are facing a possible systematic information hiding operation, a well-assembled architecture to protect data that, if revealed, would drastically change humanity's perception of its own existence. The central theory that is beginning to gain strength among independent scholars, ufologists, and even within some areas of the scientific community is the following. NASA has authentic and undisclosed records of anomalous objects captured during several space missions, both manned and unmanned. These records include images, videos, and even electromagnetic measurements that indicate the presence of entities or technologies that cannot be explained by the parameters of conventional science. It's no longer about random guesses. What there are standards, and these patterns point to something that goes far beyond sensor failures or optical illusions. Over the decades, several scientists and former employees of the space agency have come forward with testimonies that, although ignored by the mainstream media, continue to live on in forums, in independent interviews, and in alternative archives. People who worked directly on the analysis of satellite images, such as former analysts at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, stated clearly that there are internal protocols for censoring certain types of images, especially those that show anomalous structures, objects with artificial symmetry, or any unusual activity on celestial bodies such as the Moon, Mars, or the moons of Saturn and Jupiter. And what these professionals tell you are not theories. They are experiences lived behind the scenes at NASA. A former analyst, for example, revealed that all images captured by probes and satellites undergo rigorous screening before being released to the public. He described restricted rooms where selected teams evaluated every detail of an image, looking for problematic elements that might suggest the presence of structures or objects that defy conventional explanation. In these analyses, any element that could indicate intelligent activity was immediately classified. The original image was archived, and an edited version was made available on the agency's official portal. The term used among employees, according to him, was content sanitization. These revelations add to countless leaks over the years. Internal documents that mention objects with autonomous trajectory, non-ballistic behavior, or non-human engineering characteristics. These expressions are found in reports that should only deal with atmospheric phenomena or geological studies on distant planets. But the most intriguing thing is NASA's insistence on not commenting, confirming, or even clearly denying this information. The omission became the official speech, and when confronted, agency representatives opt for generic responses, often detached from technical reality. They say there is no conclusive evidence that the sensors can fail, that the data is incomplete. But how can we justify so many flaws in cutting-edge equipment built with billions of dollars in cutting-edge technology? How can we explain so many records discarded based on technical inconsistencies, when the inconsistencies always arise under the same conditions, when the unexpected appears? There are also cases in which astronauts themselves, during historic missions, reported events that were carefully hushed up. Transmissions cut off mid-sentence, archived audio, video excerpts replaced by still images. A pattern that repeats itself and can no longer be ignored. Because where there is repetition, there is intention. And where there is intention, there is a structure behind it. And this structure seems to work to prevent the world from seeing reality in full. Another alarming fact that strengthens this theory is the coincidence between UFO sightings and the presence of NASA probes in specific regions of space. Why do so many records of unidentified objects appear precisely in places where there is intense activity by the space agency? Why do certain regions of space, such as the far side of the Moon or specific areas of Mars, remain outside the most detailed exploration plans, even though they are of enormous scientific interest? What's really stopping NASA from investigating these sites in depth? Is it a lack of interest or fear of what might be found? This logic of concealment is supported, in part, by the narrative of authority. After all, NASA is seen worldwide as a symbol of science and truth. Any statement that contradicts its official stance is automatically labeled a conspiracy theory. But is it rational to blindly trust an institution that for decades has worked closely with military bodies, intelligence agencies, and industrial sectors that depend on secrecy to keep their projects protected? If there really is a truth to be protected, it is plausible to imagine that it is kept away from the public eye for a simple matter of control. Control over information, over the narrative, over technological advancement, and over the impact this would have on the social, political, and religious structures of the planet. And what this theory suggests is that we have, for a long time, been spared a reality that may not be comfortable, but is, yes, true. With each mission that goes up into space, with each image corrected before being published, with each classified report that never reaches the scientific community, suspicion increases. And the closer we get to the details, the more we realize that this is not a collective delusion, nor a UFO daydream. It is a deliberate choice made by institutions that carry with them the weight of secrets that do not fit into the pages of textbooks. And at this point, I want to bring you into this conversation. I want you to think, to question, to allow yourself to leave the comfortable narrative. Do you really think this is all a coincidence? Do you believe that NASA only works with what is released to the public? Or do you suspect that there is a structure behind deciding what can and cannot be revealed? Tell me in the comments if you suspected this before. Write phrases like "they hide more than they show." Or, "I want to see the real NASA images," if you feel like it's past time for the truth to come out. Let's transform this space into a place where the truth, even if incomplete, begins to circulate freely. If so far everything seems too conspiratorial to be true, perhaps it's time to confront something that many avoid: the evidence. And we're not talking about rumors, theories thrown to the wind, or low-quality videos recorded with shaky cameras. We are talking about documented evidence, concrete records that were officially made public or leaked by reliable sources. These elements not only support the theory that NASA is aware of unidentified aerial phenomena, but also uncover a systematic pattern of concealment that has been perpetuated for decades. And the deeper we dig, the stronger the feeling becomes that something really big is being hidden from humanity. Let's start with one of the most respected figures in space exploration, Buzz Aldrin, the second man to set foot on the moon. During an interview, Aldrin described a situation that occurred during the Apollo 11 mission, in which an unidentified luminous object was observed following the spacecraft on its trajectory. The crew, worried about what it could be, reported the phenomenon to Mission Control. At the time, the response was cautious. Officially, it was claimed that it could be part of the Saturn V rocket or some space debris. But the astronauts themselves knew that did not behave like a simple piece of metal lost in space. Years later, Aldrin spoke about the case again in documentaries and interviews, making it clear that there was no definitive explanation for what they saw. This from one of the most trained men in human history to recognize objects and events in space. Now think with me. If astronauts like Aldrin, who have complete credibility, report unexplained sightings, why has NASA never publicly investigated it with due seriousness? And most importantly, why did these reports never officially entered the mission reports? Where are the formal records? The answer lies in documents that came to light only thanks to FOIA, the United States Freedom of Information Act, which obliges the government to release information requested by journalists and citizens, as long as it does not put national security at risk. In 2011, for example, a FOIA request revealed the existence of a confidential NASA document dated 1996, which mentioned an unidentified aerial phenomenon that occurred during an orbital observation mission. The report detailed the detection of an object performing maneuvers incompatible with known technology, changing direction at sharp angles and disappearing from radar at unusual speed. The scariest thing is not the content itself, but the fact that this document was archived as confidential for over 15 years, without any disclosure to the public until legally required. And even so, when released, entire sections were redacted, covered by black stripes with justifications such as national security interests or interagency secrecy protocol. Other similar documents have also emerged in recent years. In 2019, a series of declassified files showed internal NASA correspondence commenting records of visual anomalies during unmanned probe missions, especially around Saturn and its moons. In these exchanges, scientists talked about unusual formations, non-gravitational movements, and light behaviors that suggested external interference. Yet none of these comments appeared in public mission reports. The corresponding images, originally published on the agency's official website, were removed shortly afterwards without any explanation, replaced by versions with reduced quality or different angles. This kind of attitude raises obvious questions. If there is nothing to hide, why manipulate the data? Why restrict access to images and documents that supposedly pose no risk? And why do the same names appear repeatedly behind the scenes of these decisions? Scientists linked to contracts with the Department of Defense, intelligence analysts disguised as space technicians, directors with a history of working on classified projects. It doesn't take much imagination to realize that there is a direct link between NASA, the United States government, and the UFO information control apparatus. In fact, many of the most controversial images removed from the NASA website have not disappeared completely. Thanks to the work of attentive Internet users, independent researchers, and even former employees who copied files before their deletion. Today, we have prints, raw files, and screenshots that show uncomfortable details, such as triangular objects floating near the ISS, lights in geometrically precise formation on the Moon, and inexplicable reflections in images captured by probes on Mars. Even with the argument that everything is nothing more than digital artifacts, or natural reflections. The repetition of these elements in different missions and in different conditions dismisses coincidence as a plausible justification. There are also unofficial, but incredibly consistent, reports that there are missions classified by NASA itself whose objectives have never been disclosed to the public. Missions with records that were never discussed at conferences, whose images were never transmitted, and whose results were sent directly to intelligence agencies. If that sounds unbelievable, just look at how NASA's public reports often avoid details about periods when live broadcasts are interrupted without any apparent technical failure. Some of these interruptions last for precious minutes, long enough for something to be seen, recorded, and quickly classified. And at this point, the question is worth asking. Why blindly trust an institution that decides alone what the public can or cannot see? Why accept that real images are replaced by artistic representations, CGI animations, and simulations in the name of visual clarity? Scientific transparency requires full exposure of data, even those that are disturbing. The role of a public agency like NASA should be to reveal, not to omit. But it seems that the logic here is different. Preserve control, avoid chaos, and protect the secrets that sustain an informed elite, while the rest of humanity lives in ignorance. Now you tell me, have you ever heard about these missing images, these leaked documents, and the hushed-up reports? Have you seen any of those mysterious videos of the ISS that were taken down without explanation? Write in the comments, "I want the complete files," or stop erasing the truth if you believe it is high time for NASA to open up everything it knows. Let's show that the public is paying attention, and that this silence will no longer go unnoticed, given all this evidence. Leaks and reports, it is natural for the public to begin to question the stance of the institutions involved, especially NASA, which has led space exploration for decades and maintains a central role in the construction of the collective imagination about the universe. And it is precisely at this point that the so-called official counterpoint comes in, the version of facts presented by the space agency itself and by sectors of the scientific community that orbit its influence. In general, NASA maintains a cautious, often protocol stance, repeatedly stating that there is no concrete evidence of intelligent life outside Earth, and that none of the phenomena observed to date point conclusively to non-human technology. These statements are constructed with carefully chosen language. Terms such as "without empirical evidence," "without scientific confirmation," or "inconclusive" appear frequently in official communications. At first glance, this approach may seem responsible and ethical. After all, science requires rigorous evidence. However, when we look at the volume of suppressed information, the censored files, the ignored statements, and the altered images, this stance begins to seem not just offensive, but intentionally limited. How can we trust the statement that there is no evidence if much of the data remains classified, restricted, or completely absent from public debate? Another point that deserves attention is the way in which the scientific community, often financed directly or indirectly by contracts with government agencies, ends up reproducing the same rhetoric. Many researchers avoid taking a public stance on unidentified phenomena for fear of compromising their credibility or losing access to research funds. The power structure within institutionalized science, especially in the aerospace field, disincentivizes open questioning, creating a culture of silence that removes any possibility of deeper investigation into events that do not fit into accepted models. And even when undeniable data emerges, such as videos released by the Pentagon showing flying objects behaving outside of any known pattern, the official response is still distancing. NASA says it follows the studies with interest, but avoids any firmer position, instead of actively contributing with its tools and technological expertise. It limits itself to observing from afar, as if the phenomenon of UFOs were not directly related to its mission to understand the universe and humanity's place within it. This stance is contradictory. After all, if there is something crossing the skies and moving in space in such an anomalous way, shouldn't the largest space agency on the planet be at the forefront of investigations? Why then this resistance to addressing the topic with the depth it deserves? Why the extreme caution when faced with data that has already gone beyond the realm of speculation? Official discourse seems increasingly disconnected from observable reality. The claim that there is still no concrete evidence rings hollow when compared with testimonies from astronauts, documents obtained via FOIA images deleted from the official website, and reports from professionals who were within the structure of NASA itself. And more than that, this sentence raises a simple but powerful question. If NASA doesn't have access to information about unidentified objects and possible signs of intelligent life, who does? Or is it that, deep down, this public denial is part of a much broader strategy coordinated between governments and institutions to contain the impact that a possible revelation of this magnitude would have on society? Because when science refuses to investigate what is before our eyes, it stops being science and becomes politics. And in the case of NASA, the policy of silence cost public trust dearly. Now that you've seen both sides, I want to know what you think. Do you believe the official explanation that there is no evidence? Or do you feel like the truth is being purposely suppressed? Write here in the comments phrases like science also omits, or I don't trust the official discourse. If you agree that it is past time for the authorities to treat this issue with the seriousness it demands. But what if the biggest twist is not the existence of UFOs, but the fact that all of this is already known and is being deliberately hidden? What if NASA, with all its technology, already recorded, documented, and analyzed real evidence of intelligent life beyond Earth, and simply chose not to share it with the public? Because if everything we've shown so far is true, and the evidence suggests that it is, that changes everything. It changes our worldview, our place in the universe, and most importantly, who is in control of the information. The narrative that there is no concrete evidence is no longer sustainable, given the testimonies of astronauts, the documents obtained via FOI, the removed images, and the repeated sequence of silencing that accumulates over time. After all, why? Would NASA hesitate to reveal something so big? Fear of collective panic, pressure from greater forces, or the fear of losing control over a truth that would place humanity in a new stage of consciousness. Think carefully. We are being observed, visited, or monitored by intelligence from outside Earth. This means we are not the only ones. And knowing this calls everything into question: religions, science, politics, power. It's not just about discovering something. It's about what this discovery would cause. And perhaps, precisely because of this secret is still kept. But the most disturbing thing is to think that maybe we've known this for decades, and simply we got used to the silence. We accept the vacuum of information, ready-made answers, edited versions. And with that, we let others decide what we should and shouldn't know. The question now is simple. Are we ready to know the truth? Or are we still going to accept that NASA continues to omit the most important details of everything it sees out there? I want to hear you. Comment, hear what you think. Write phrases like humanity needs the truth, or stop hiding reality, if you think it's past time to reveal everything. Let's show that there are many people awake and ready to know what's behind the silence. If you've come this far, it's because you know something isn't right. You felt it as you listened to every detail, every piece of evidence, every contradiction, coming directly from the biggest space agency on the planet. With each hidden piece of information, each image removed from the air, each classified document, the pattern becomes clearer. Yes, there is a structure set up to keep you in the dark. A structure that decides what you can know, and especially what you can't even question. NASA's silence is not an absence of information. It's strategy. It is a type of control that disguises itself as science, institutional caution, commitment to the truth, when in fact what exists is a carefully installed curtain between what they see and what they let you see. Because if the truth about UFOs is really exposed, as many documents and testimonies already indicate, it will no longer be possible to keep the world as it is. The questions that would arise about who we are, where we came from, and who we are sharing the universe with would break ancient pillars of power and belief. That's why every little piece that appears, every leaked excerpt, every transmission failure, every testimony from those who have already been inside is valuable. And that's why content like this needs to circulate, because the algorithm doesn't want you to see it. Because this conversation, this line of reasoning, this search for answers is of no interest to those who constructed the official narrative. And now, after everything you've seen, the inevitable question: do you still believe that NASA is being completely transparent about what it knows about UFOs? Or do you feel that there is something much bigger behind it? A muffled, covered-up truth kept by force to protect interests that are not ours? Tell me here in the comments. I want to know your view on all of this. Write phrases like the truth is being hidden, or NASA needs to open the files if you feel like it's past time to stop accepting silence for an answer. Also comment if you've seen any content that disappeared from the internet, or remember any NASA image that was later replaced or corrected. Your report may connect dots that other people have also noticed. If this video impacted you, if at any point you felt that shiver when you realized that the truth may be being hidden right before our eyes, then you need to join this community that seeks answers, questions the system, and don't accept living in the dark. Here, we investigate what they don't want you to know. Here, the truth is priority. Then subscribe to the channel now, activate the bell, and join us on this journey through everything that NASA, the government, and large institutions refuse to reveal. Because each new video is a piece of the puzzle, and you're part of it. In the next video, you will discover what astronauts saw in space and could never tell. Hidden reports, forced silences, and protocols that prevent the truth from coming to light. There are real experiences that have never reached the public, and now the time has come to reveal what's behind it.